Welcome back to another week of Salute Your Sports and our last show of 2021. Another bye for Drew, but Tom Castleman, festive in the Christmas spirit, is here. Myself, Kamenenchev, I'm here. We'll be talking all about the college football playoffs, including picking our champ, plus some NFL talk because we have some big matchups this weekend. We'll have all that and more. And hopefully, Tom, you and everyone else had a Merry Christmas. Certainly looks like you did.
Had a wonderful Christmas wearing the hat because we are still in the 12 days of Christmas, of course, between Christmas and Epiphany, but had a wonderful holiday, seeing family and a couple of friends along the way. A much, much needed reprieve from what we went through last year with everything being virtual. So definitely a wonderful and blessed Christmas. But we will begin with New Year's Eve. Don't know what plans you might have common, but I know that the Georgia Bulldogs, Michigan Wolverines, Cincinnati Bearcats, and Alabama Crimson Tide are all going to have potentially really happy feelings going into the new year and some crushed feelings going into the new year. But at least they'll be able to flip that calendar and start off fresh in 2022. We'll begin with probably the closer of the two games, Michigan and Georgia, certainly to kick this one off. What are your early thoughts on this one?
Yeah, this is the only game where some people might disagree, but I know you and I are going to be on the same page here. These two teams are actually pretty similar offensively. They prefer to run a little bit more than they pass. Georgia scores slightly more points per game. Michigan gets a bit more total yards. Offensively, they're pretty good. I think Georgia's a little bit better at passing. Michigan's a little bit better at running, but both teams do have really good offensive lines, which is another area they're close in. But both of these two teams, while they have good offenses, they're here because of their defenses. And this game's going to be won at the line of scrimmage. I talked about the offensive line. How about this? Georgia's allowed 11 sacks this year, tied for the fourth least, and Michigan has allowed the third least at 10 sacks. And the only two teams who have allowed less are Army and Air Force. And those two teams, as you know, run the ball a lot. So not as much sack opportunities. Mizzou knows it, by the way, even though they couldn't stop them passing late in that bowl game. But both of these teams have really good defensive linemen as well. Mr. Hutchison, we know him, a Heisman candidate. But we had Georgia has the big guy up front. He was actually, I believe, top 10 in the Heisman voting, if not just outside it. So really good defensive lines, really good offensive lines. So this will be one at the line of scrimmage, kind of a little bit of an old school game because neither of these teams are necessarily an air it out type team. So it's going to be the big guys up front that control the game. And I trust Georgia's big guys a little bit more. I also trust Georgia's defense more. Georgia allowing about 9.5 points per game this year. Michigan about 16 a game. So I like Georgia's defense a little bit better. I like Kirby Smart as head coach a little bit better. I think Georgia's going to win this game. I do think Michigan, my gut feeling tells me that they are going to cover that 7.5 point spread, but I will take Georgia straight up to win this game.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a close one and in a really fun kind of way. I think something that we're going to see is Georgia get tested a little bit playing a team that's more right up their alley in terms of style of play. I mean, Arkansas, Auburn were certainly ranked teams that Georgia played throughout the season, but Auburn, I think, ended right around a 500 record. A decent team, but certainly nothing special. Arkansas, pretty good year, but again, not on the same caliber as Georgia. We saw what happened with Georgia and Alabama when they were playing somebody of a similar caliber. And I think Michigan is close enough to that tier to make it a close game. And I'm actually going to lean slightly to the Big Ten on this one, going for a little bit of the upset there.
Okay.
We've seen Cade McNamara make some plays at quarterback. We haven't really seen that from Bennett Stinson, the fourth. So I'm leaning a little bit more toward this is going to be a game that, because it's all about line play, it's all about defenses keeping it close, it's going to come down to kind of like the special teams play. It's going to come down to, an unfortunately timed penalty, just a busted coverage here or there. It's literally going to be like one or two plays that make or break this game, I think. And I think I like Michigan just a little bit better to take advantage of that. I mean, we saw Hutchinson absolutely dominate Ohio State's left tackle, who I don't believe had given up a sack all season. Hutchinson got after C.J. Stroud more than just a couple of times. So while these offensive lines have been really, really good, I like the edge rushers on Michigan to put that pressure in, sometimes allow Harbaugh just to drop 7 in coverage. And basically, if you can rush 4, if you can get home with 4 and have everybody else fall back, we've seen Georgia not do quite so well when they have to keep up. So I think it'll come down to a play or two. But I'm going to lean Michigan just to keep things a little bit interesting for the show.
Yeah, I like it. I'll tell you this, my final thought on this game before we move on to the no-brainer game. And yes, it is a no-brainer game. You better believe it. My thought is that actually, Tom, the one thing about Georgia, they're so good against the run. The only way to beat Georgia is to be able to actually air it out. Not that their defense is per se bad against the pass, but that's been the one area they've been a little bit vulnerable this season. And Alabama took advantage of it big time. So I don't actually think Michigan is built the same way as Alabama is to pass the ball. That's why I like Georgia's defense against the running team. I think Ohio State actually would have fared better against Georgia than Michigan because they're a better passing attack. So I think matchups-wise, I like what Georgia has here. The other thing to think about is that Georgia is just really, really solid all over the defensive line, and they're a really good team. They're also going to be able to dominate Michigan, maybe more than Ohio State did. And I think Michigan's defense isn't as good as Georgia's. I know that 41 spot against Alabama looks bad, but there was also a pick 6 in that game. I actually felt that Michigan's defense didn't look that great against Ohio State. It was a matter of them playing in a cold weather game, which hurt Ohio State's passing game, and also their offense controlling the game. So I actually like Georgia's defense better, but it's going to be a close game. Nothing would surprise me. It is the year of the upsets. We had so many upsets all over sports. We know that. So a Michigan win would not shock me. I will say this, though. An Alabama loss would shock me. In this game against Cincinnati, you talk about keeping up. Alabama is getting 347.9 pass yards a game. Cincinnati just 248.7. So there's about 100 more passing yards through the air for Alabama and that great offense compared to Cincinnati. So I really like Alabama to win this game. We've seen the 1-4 matchups not be close hardly ever. This line is at 13.5, which is about what it should be. I think Alabama will win by 14 points is what I'm saying. I can see that line moving to 14.5. I mean, I can see a backdoor situation as well. So not feeling very confident on that line. I am feeling confident that Alabama will be up by 2 touchdowns with 4 minutes to go in this game, 14 or more. So I feel good about it. One thing to think about this game, Cincinnati has not played a team like Alabama. Alabama's faced Georgia. They've also faced some pretty good SEC teams, maybe not quite at that level, but Cincinnati hasn't faced anyone like Alabama at all. And quite frankly, last year they had that great run. They hadn't faced anyone like Georgia. And I know they kept it close, but they lost. So I think Alabama is going to have no problem winning this game against Cincinnati. It's just a matter of how much. The question to me is, do they cover? Because that is very, very close. I think that line is set about what it needs to be at.
Absolutely. First off, apologies to Stetson Bennett. I keep making the mistake of flipping the names because I'm used to Bennett being a first name and Stetson is more of a last name. I keep flipping it, so apologies to him for that.
I thought you flipped it, but I didn't want to say anything because I wasn't sure myself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I like Alabama to win as well. Of course, I'm going to be cheering for the Cincinnati Bearcats in part. Year of the upset in part. You know, I've been on this bus for how many months now with the Bearcats. So, I mean, I'm going to be rooting for them over Alabama, but you know, quite frankly, with a win being more or less not a great possibility, I'm looking for them to keep it within, you know, single possession, you know, throughout most of the game, ideally. Just because we've had this whole glass ceiling put in place on non Power 5 schools, so it would be nice to see a team that basically has like the perfect concoction to get to this point where you have a really good coach in Luke Fickell. You've got a multi-year starter, Desmond Ridder, at quarterback, and I believe they returned, if not all 22 starters on both sides of the ball, they returned like 20 or 21. A lot of guys coming back, so you have a lot of experience, a lot of talent, and everybody knows the system in which they're playing. It's a lot of reacting instead of thinking, instead of processing. So this is about as perfect a recipe as you can have to get to this point. I'm hopeful that it's enough to at least keep it a competitive game, at least keep eyeballs on the screen in this game against Alabama, because I would like to see some of this, Power Five bias kind of go away a little bit.
Sure.
Where it just because a good team can't necessarily schedule the most daunting, non-conference schedule because they play in a weak conference, that they are automatically pushed aside. So I'm hoping Cincinnati can do a little something to convince committee members in years going forward that shouldn't necessarily be baked into the equation straight up. So that's what I'm rooting for in the game. Although I do think, absolutely Alabama's going to win. It's around like a 10-point game, something along those lines. I think Cincinnati would have done pretty well for themselves.
Yeah, a couple things to your point, Tom. First off, I want to say this, a lot of the games are about matchups. So the reason why I'm picking Alabama to win big isn't necessarily just because Cincinnati isn't really good. I think Cincinnati, well, to be honest, I think to me, Cincinnati is probably the fifth best team. I actually think Ohio State is the fourth best, but Ohio State had their chance and blew it. And that's why I think Ohio State would be the team that is most built to keep up with Alabama because they have a great passing game, a great passing quarterback. I think for the record, I think Notre Dame would also lose by 2 touchdowns in this game. Notre Dame, like Cincinnati, is a great defensive team, a solid offensive team, but not necessarily a juggernaut, one that maybe runs the ball a little bit more than it passes. So I want to say this for the record. We've seen the 1 seed beat the 2 seed or the 4 seed rather, by 2 touchdowns most of these years. These 1 versus 4 matchups have, quite frankly, almost never been close. So the fact that Alabama is going to beat Cincinnati big, it shouldn't be. It'll be perceived as a slight to the small schools, the Power Five, or rather the Group of 5, but it shouldn't be because we're used to seeing the 1 pound the 4, and I do think Alabama would comfortably pound Notre Dame. And I think they would win comfortably against Ohio State, too. I think it might be a little bit closer, but I think it would be a tighter matchup because Cincinnati's a really good team. So this isn't a knock on them. It's just that Alabama is just that much better. And I will add this, too. The reason why Cincinnati's here, Tom, they did schedule a tough team. They went into Notre Dame and they won at Notre Dame. Without that win at Notre Dame, they would not be here. So if I know it seems it's stacked against you. And when they move to 8 teams or 12 teams, whatever they're proposing or doing, I don't think it's official yet. Those teams will get their shot. But in the current 4-team playoff, as much as it stinks, as much as it's hard, on you to schedule a big team, you can ask around. I know someone will deny you, and I know they'll tell you got to come to our house. But it's go big or go home. Cincinnati had that mentality. They said, we'll go at Notre Dame and we'll beat them. They ask Notre Dame, they ask Alabama, they ask Georgia, they ask Clemson, Ohio State, some of these top dogs. I don't think all of them are going to say no. And you're going to get a payout probably if you come there. So for those Group of 5 teams that are complaining it's stacked against us, you got to follow Cincinnati's model. And it may not work. It may backfire. You may go into that stadium and lose, but at least you tried. Because this is why Cincinnati's in this game. They did play that big dog schedule. They did play Notre Dame. But I think Notre Dame, as we've seen, Notre Dame's like that team who's very, very good, but not quite great. We've seen Notre Dame, when they get in these situations, they've gotten beaten around. But, I mean, they're number 5 in these college football playoff rankings. So that is why Cincinnati is there. That's the only team Notre Dame lost to. So hats off to Cincinnati actually accepting a road game against a great big-time school. That's why they're here. But I do think, yes, Alabama's going to win. The question mark is Alabama-Georgia rematch. For me, it's Alabama-Georgia. For you, it's Alabama-Michigan. So, I mean, who do you have winning the whole thing?
Probably Alabama at this point. I mean, they had a not great loss to a 3-loss team a couple months ago, but they're pretty much peaking at the right time. something that kind of is a significant mark against them is John Mechie is hurt. The thing is, it's Alabama, and they've got another 5-star recruit right behind him. So even if they don't have the same level of experience, the raw talent is going to be there, and presumably the dedication and the work ethic is going to be there, because I don't imagine Nick Saban tolerates a lot of guys who show up with just talent alone and don't put in the effort to succeed. So I like Alabama. They have pretty much the most NFL ready type of roster. They're going to have however many guys graduate, go pro in the fall. I mean, Michigan has some top end guys for sure. And in your case, Georgia does as well. It's just they're not on the offensive side of the ball. And that's something that we saw was an issue between Georgia and Alabama. I suspect it will be a similar issue with Michigan and Bama as well. So most likely it'll be the Crimson Tide. They'll be insufferable as usual. But I think that's probably the way it's going to go.
Yeah, and you look at Alabama, they're actually a team. First off, I know that A&M lost to you as a 3-loss team, but again, I cannot harp on this enough. A&M lost 2 games when they replaced their backup. Mm-hmm. They had to go with the backup quarterback, who basically they graduated a great quarterback. They had a new guy stepping in. He gets hurt. So this other guy has like no playing time, didn't expect anything. So it took him a while to get going. So 2 of those losses were earlier before he got going. It was a road game in a great place, but ultimately you're going to lose at some point. And Alabama is better off losing then. And if you actually take a look at about the last 10 years of Alabama's dominance, with the exception of, I believe, maybe 1 game to Clemson, which was an incredible Clemson team, and maybe that 1 game to LSU in the regular season with Joe Burrow, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, one of the all-time great teams. Alabama has probably only lost, about 10 games in the last 10 years, it feels like. And the vast majority of them have actually been against a solid but not great team. I know they had a loss to Ole Miss a few years back, and they lost against A&M. They're a team that plays up and down to its competition, which is actually natural for teams to do. So I actually think Alabama's going to play up to its competition. I think they're going to win against whoever they play. I think whether it's Michigan or Georgia, I think Alabama has too much talent. And I think both of those matchups are really good. What did Nick Saban say a couple years ago, Tom? I don't know if you remember this. He said that it's no longer defense and run the ball. It's all about passing the ball. And it's about offense. He's changed his whole scheme. Alabama was the dominant defense. You look at the guys he's been getting in recent seasons. Tua was a top recruit coming out of high school. By the way, he's doing better in the NFL now, which I said he would do well. You have Bryce Young was the top recruit quarterback coming in, and he's getting all these top recruit receivers. Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Mechie. I mean, who else they had? I mean, Henry Ruggs was a really big talent before his issues off the field. I'm probably missing someone. They had Alabama, Jerry Jeudy.
This year, Jameson Williams has been really good for him.
Yeah.
And he was on Ohio State.
Though, but he is recruiting these top-notch receivers, recruiting these top-notch quarterbacks. It used to be that he wanted the best defensive and offensive linemen and the best running backs, which is how Alabama used to win. Now they're winning with receivers and quarterbacks in a passing game. And that's something they have. Michigan, Georgia, or Cincinnati, all 3 of these teams don't have it. I think the only team that really has a shot to beat Alabama in such a playoff scenario, to me, is a team that can really keep up with them. And that's been the issue. Alabama over the years has struggled against great passing teams and maybe quarterbacks who can run. Johnny Manziel, a guy who beat them. I don't think you're going to beat Alabama by running the ball. I mean, they're amazing at passing, but that defensive line is still really, really good. And they're built to beat you passing the ball. So really, the only way you'll beat them is if you can spread it out and go at their defense. And I think none of these playoff teams, quite frankly, have the ability to do that. Again, I think Ohio State is the one team who I can see maybe beating Alabama. I would pick Alabama still, though. But matchups-wise, all these other top teams in the country, a lot of them don't have great quarterbacks and great passing games. And Alabama has that, so they just won't keep up. Give me the Tide to win, and I really don't think the national title game will be that close. I think it'll be closer than 17 points, like it was against Georgia. I think it could be 7-10, but I don't think it'll be ever where you think that they're going to lose, because I think Alabama is going to do what they do, and they're going to win again because it's Alabama.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of great passing attacks and dominance, we're going to stick with that topic on one end and flip it a different way. The Bengals, Joe Burrow, putting up 525 yards, I believe it was, or 45 yards, setting the Bengals all-time record for a single game passing. Bengals, however, have not won a playoff game in 30 years. I have not witnessed or even been around to live in a time where the Bengals have won a playoff game. And I think I have bad as a Bears fan. This is the longest active drought in the NFL, fourth longest in NFL history. But this year, with Joe Burrow at the helm, Cincinnati is on track to win the division, host a playoff game. Are they actually going to be able to, at Paul Brown Stadium, celebrate a win in near historic fashion in Cincinnati?
Yeah, we'll answer that question first, and then we'll get into the Chiefs game, which is a matchup that I want to break down as well. Chiefs-Bengals, it's going to be a big one. First off, I want to say that I absolutely love Joe Burrow. Huge fan of Joe Burrow. I do think he's eventually going to break that streak for the Bengals. It's just a matter of time. I don't think he's going to do it this year, though. And here's why. Their schedule is going to be pretty tough in the playoffs. Whether they get the 3 or 4 seed, pretty much they're looking at either the Bills, they're looking at the Patriots, or they're looking at the Colts, who they'll have to host. Whoever gets the wild card. Bills actually likely to get the division now because they actually have a better divisional record than the Patriots. So the Bills win out, they'll get the division, but either it'll be Bills or Patriots, or it'll be the Colts. Possibly the Titans, but a lot of things Titans have to lose out, Colts have to win out. So realistically, we're looking at 3 teams. We're looking at the Patriots, we're looking at the Bills, and we are looking at the Colts. And the Colts are hot. I know Carson Wentz is going to be out because of COVID, because he didn't want to get vaccinated. But Carson Wentz is not the reason they win. They're winning because of their great linebacker play. Bobby Okereke, Darius Leonard. This defense is great for the Colts. And, of course, Jonathan Taylor, an MVP candidate. So Carson Wentz, I think, is a very minor loss for them this week. And who are they playing? They're not playing anyone good. The Raiders. I think Colts will take care of business, and Carson Wentz should be back for the playoffs. I think the Colts are a better overall team than the Bengals. I like them better defensively. I like them better even running the ball, even though the Bengals are also good at that with Joe Mixon. I don't think they're going to beat the Colts, who are hotter than fire. They're really hot right now. I don't think they would beat the Bills. The Bills are also heating up right now, and they've got very talented defense and offense. And quite frankly, I think Bill Belichick against not a rookie quarterback, I guess he's a second-year quarterback, but against young quarterbacks, he knows how to dial up those defenses. And I think it's going to be a struggle against the Patriots as well, who, by the way, are better on the road than they are at home. Cincinnati has a shot to beat all of them. I am not highly confident in that pick. It's probably one of those where I say 52, 53% they lose, but we got to make a pick. And I'm going to say that they're not going to win because I don't think they're better than any of those teams. By the way, I think all 4 of those teams are identical 9-6 records. So they are close. But I think those other teams all would beat the Bengals in that scenario. But I think Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase and company, this is their year to get their feet wet in the playoffs. And I think maybe next year they can get a playoff win.
Absolutely. Well, it all comes down to which Bengals defense shows up. Is it the one that's atrocious, that gets torched, hosting Cleveland, giving out 41 points? Or is it the one that plays not outstanding necessarily, but good enough to give Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd enough of an opportunity to go out and win on a last possession type basis? This is something that, I mean, of course, we haven't seen this from Cincinnati because they just haven't really had that great outstanding quarterback play for a lot. I mean, they had Carson Palmer, but a knee injury kind of changed the trajectory of his career in Cincinnati. And we haven't seen Joe Burrow in any playoff scenarios because this is the first year that he has an opportunity to be in a playoff hunt. So it's going to be really interesting to see how a player of his poise and his talent kind of handles potentially that big moment where I don't see the Bengals necessarily blowing anybody out in the playoffs for a lot of the reasons you mentioned. I think the teams that they're going to be playing pretty close in talent on both sides of the ball, but it's going to come down to in those key crucial possessions, is Joe Burrow going to be able to stay who he is and deliver in that clutch moment? I mean, he definitely has been able to do so, winning a national championship for LSU. So we know he has it in him somewhere. Does that translate to the NFL, or is it, like you say, a little bit of a learning curve? I'm going to go ahead and be optimistic on this one. I'm going to, I like Joe Burrow. Seems like a pretty good guy all around, and I don't mind, Cincinnati kind of breaking the mold a little bit and attaining some of that success. I think it'd just be really, really heartbreaking, of course, if they didn't. So, I mean, I'm going to go, pretty much just the opposite of you, like 52, 53%. I think Cincinnati can pull it off. So I'll shade ever so slightly to the Bengals breaking the drought this year and getting their first playoff win. And at home, too. That's going to be a lot of fun for their fans.
Yeah, I am. I was, a 1-year-old baby boy in Bulgaria the last time they won a playoff game. For the record, the Bengals, yeah, you said it. They haven't had that quarterback talent. They've missed out on some guys. Achilles Smith was supposed to be good. He was a bust for them. Carson Palmer had the talent, but he got injured. Andy Dalton was very average. He was solid. Andy Dalton wasn't bad, but he was that guy who would get them to the playoffs and they would lose. So, yeah, it could go either way. I do like Joe Burrow. By the way, he is a guy who's been underestimated before by Urban Meyer at Ohio State, where he didn't want him. And he ended up proving Urban Meyer wrong by doing big things at Ohio State. So maybe he'll prove me wrong. And actually, I don't know if you saw one of those ESPN guys, I think Dan Orlovsky, was ranking his top quarterbacks in the NFL. And he actually had Joe Burrow at number 5, which I thought was interesting. And you can make a case for that. Case for that. I actually there's something about him that I just trust more than Justin Herbert. I don't know what it is, but the more I think about it, I just trust him more than Justin Herbert. I will say Dan Orlovsky is out of his mind, though, because he had Patrick Mahomes number 4. He had Matthew Stafford number 3. So that also makes me question his sanity, because there's no world.
Or his motives at the very least, in terms of, getting some TV time.
To get some attention. I mean, I would go Mahomes number 1, but if you went Rodgers or Brady ahead of him, I'm not going to destroy you necessarily. But if you go Matthew Stafford ahead of him, you've got problems with your head. Crazy, Dan Orlovsky. But anyways, he's very high on Burrow. I at least agree with him on Burrow. We're talking about Mahomes and Burrow. Big game this weekend. Bengals at home against the Chiefs, who have won 8 in a row, have the best record in the AFC. Bengals are a 5-point underdog at home. Who do you like in this game? And who do you like to cover, too? Because those are 2 different questions. It'll be a good game.
Absolutely are. It's going to be a really, really fun game. I'm going to lean probably Bengals to cover, Chiefs to win type of thing. I mean, Kansas City has been on a pretty good roll as of late. The one thing that their defense hasn't really been able to do is stop good offenses. I mean, you look at some of the wins, Cowboys with Amari Cooper out, just Broncos in general, Raiders twice in general, Packers without Aaron Rodgers. Chargers, they did enough to come out with a win over that team. And then, of course, Steelers, not great on offense. So I think the Bengals' firepower is going to be enough to keep the game somewhat close, where it's going to come down to probably like a Chiefs last possession type thing, or Bengals failed last possession type of thing in terms of the final score and outcome of the game. So I like for this one to be really exciting, really fun to watch, lots of points getting put up on the board. And just like I said with the Bengals' playoff chances of winning a game, it's going to come down to whose defense does just enough, who does not make the big mistake. Because I think we've seen Burrow make, the occasional boneheaded mistake. And we've seen Patrick Mahomes kind of uncharacteristically make, we're used to him playing perfect. So, of course, it's an impossible standard to which we hold him. We've seen him try to force a little bit sometimes this year, where it's either just a bad decision or he's trying to fit it in such a small window that it is a ball that a defense can make a play on, tip it, that sort of thing, where he's trying to thread the needle a little too finely. if he can avoid that sort of thing, I think it's a fairly easy Chiefs win. But that's the sort of thing that's going to be turning the tide in this game one way or another. I'm going Chiefs, though, to win outright.
Yeah, I think Tom Mahomes hasn't been doing that as much in recent weeks. He's really
He's
got the
been better.
turnovers down. He's been really good, and it's like almost like he's realized what he's doing, because I think the NFL has schemed up the Chiefs. They have found the way to scheme them up as best as they can, and the Chiefs still have talent, and their offense is still playing really well recently. They had some injuries, and a big thing about the Chiefs is, though, they had a pretty new offensive line that was really bad early in the season. Their offensive line looks pretty good lately, and it was indicative in that touchdown where they gave Mahomes like 7 seconds to throw and found Pringle in the end zone. And there's Mahomes pointing to his offensive lineman, you the man, giving love back to his guys, which, by the way, I love about Patrick Mahomes. He is the ultimate teammate and leader, a guy that's beloved by his teammates. The Chiefs' defense has also been incredibly good over that 8-game winning streak. Actually, I know you list those offenses, but I tell you this, those offenses aren't as bad as you think, because you're not giving the Raiders enough credit. They're certainly up and down, but they've got a pretty talented passing attack with Derek Carr. Derek Carr is top 10 in the league in yards. He's a pretty talented quarterback, and the Chiefs shut those guys down big time. Not to mention that, I know Amari Cooper's out, but man, the Cowboys have so many weapons. Even without Amari Cooper, they're still a pretty darn formidable offense. So for the Chiefs to hold them down that bad, I see your point. They played a lot of weaker-ish offenses, but I think you're selling the Raiders short, and you're selling the Cowboys short as well, if you're looking at those two opponents. But it's going to be a good game. I agree. I think it's going to be good. I think it should be a little bit high scoring. Statistically, the Chiefs scoring about one more point, allowing about one less point this season. It's going to be close. I think it's a huge game for Kansas City because the Titans actually beat them head-to-head, and they're one game ahead of Tennessee for that number one overall seed in the AFC, which, by the way, perhaps more importantly than home field, which I think is a little bit overhyped with how teams have been playing on the road, is actually the first-round bye. I think the bye is the reason why you want it. I believe in the current playoff format, only one team gets a bye now, Tom. I just looked it up. I think it's like 2, 7, 3, 6, 4, 5. So the number one overall seed is big to get you guys to rest up and to really get a close look at like I know they look at tape, but it's a whole different scenario. Like that entire Chiefs coaching staff is going to be watching the games of the two opponents, and they're going to watch the games closely and take a look at who they're going to play. So that should help them. I think Kansas City is just a little bit better on both sides of the ball. They're a little bit better on offense. They're a little bit better on defense. And the Bengals, they got to prove it. They got to prove it. To be the best, you got to beat the best. And I know that now they've conquered the Steelers, who are down, by the way. And they conquered the Ravens in their division as well, which, by the way, like they're a game ahead of the Ravens, but they beat them both times. They beat the Steelers both times. So if those two teams, if they lose this game and those two teams win, the Bengals are in. They're going to be in the playoffs. They'll win next week. They've got the tiebreakers. They'll win the division. But that's their next step. Their next step is, can you beat the top team in the league in Kansas City? For sure in their conference. I think Kansas City is the best in the conference. I don't know about the whole league, but that's the step, and they're going to have to do it. I don't think they'll do it this time. Maybe next year. But give me the Chiefs. Give me Patty Mahomes rounding into form. And I like the Chiefs to win this game. And I like the Chiefs to what? Run the table, win this game. And then they'll probably have to play their starters the last week unless Tennessee loses. So they could actually end the season on a 10-game winning streak. And then win, 3 playoff games, win 13 in a row, and win the Super Bowl. How about them Chiefs?
Definitely within the realm of possibility. A couple teams that historically don't have as much success, at least within the past couple of decades, Cardinals and Cowboys. This is another one that looks to be really, really exciting. Potentially lots of points put up on the board between a couple quarterbacks who actually might be getting a little bit healthier. Dak Prescott looking as good as he has after being kind of banged up for a couple of weeks. Kyler Murray kind of rounding a little bit better back into fashion for the Cardinals, although they certainly suffered a loss this past weekend. Who do you like in this one, Cowboys and Cardinals?
Yeah, these two teams are going in opposite directions. We'll have our betting locks of the week later in the show, and I have a theme for my picks, and even honestly, even a theme for the last pick. I'm going with the hot hand. This is a hot
Hmm.
hand type show. The Chiefs have that long winning streak; they keep it rolling, and I like the Cowboys. The Cowboys in this game. I mean, the Cowboys have won 4 straight, all by 6 or more. They just won 56-14 against Washington. I know it's Washington, but it's the
Hmm.
year of the upsets. Who else is winning 56-14 this year? That is one of the biggest wins of the year against a rival in your division. That's a statement win for Dallas. It could have been more, by the way, if they wanted to pour it on in the fourth quarter. It was like 42-7, like midway through the third quarter.
Hmm.
So dominant win. Cardinals, meanwhile, have lost 3 straight, all by 6 or more. Dallas is a better team. The Cowboys are at home. They've got it all going now. They're actually probably, if you factor in both sides of the ball, granted they are a little bit inconsistent, and that's the test with them, but they are probably the most explosive team, arguably on defense and offense in the league, because they've got literally, I mean, Trayvon Diggs is leading the league in picks with 11. They've got Micah Parsons disrupting everybody. And then they have that guy Lawrence who just got like a pick six as a defensive lineman. I mean, they're forcing turnovers left and right. And then they obviously have Amari Cooper. They've got
Hmm.
CeeDee Lamb, who's a great receiver. Schultz is looking good at tight end. They've got 2 running backs in Zeke and Pollard, who are both getting healthier themselves. And actually, Michael Gallup is a pretty explosive third receiver as well. So, I mean, this is probably the most explosive team in the NFL. The best Cowboys team since they were winning Super Bowls back in the day. I know they had one really good year with Romo and DeMarco Murray, but I didn't think their defense was
Hmm.
nearly as good as the one is right now. So I like the Cowboys for sure in this game. I like them because I still don't like Kyler Murray in big games. Whenever he plays a good team, he seemed to fold. He had 2 picks against the Packers, 2 picks against the Rams. Played a little bit better against the Colts this last week. Didn't turn it over, but wasn't quite on in a loss. So he struggled in the close games. He's one of those guys who's really good as a front runner, but he's yet to prove it to me in a close game. And I don't see the Cardinals blowing out the Cowboys.
Hmm.
So if this is either going to be a Cowboys blowout or a close game. So in that scenario, I don't trust Kyler Murray. He's without DeAndre Hopkins. James Conner's banged up. J.J. Watt's not there. So give me the Cowboys to win this game. And the Cowboys are going to be cheering hard for the Green Bay Packers to lose, because I think Dallas wins out. And if they can get a loss from the Packers, they can get the number 1 overall seed. Otherwise, they'll be the number 2 in the NFC. They do have tiebreakers over both the Rams and Bucks.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I like Dallas as well, which is kind of an odd thing for just about anybody outside of the Dallas Fort Worth area to say in terms of America's team. It's kind of been a love hate relationship, but I think that they actually have a lot of really likable guys on the team right now. I like the Cowboys as well for a lot of the reasons that you mentioned. The one thing to kind of keep an eye on is that the Cardinals, this season at least, have played really, really well on the road. For whatever reason, it's been at home where they have struggled. So they find themselves as an underdog on the road. I don't know how much that really matters. I mean, I think, missing DeAndre Hopkins is a huge, huge loss, because even though you do still have some talented receivers, he is just overwhelmingly talented. And certainly, if anybody can compete with Trayvon Diggs for a jump ball, it's going to be DeAndre Hopkins. Now, if you're going, AJ Green, Christian Kirk, Rondale Moore as your top receivers, you kind of lose that edge. So we'll see how it goes, but I definitely think a lot of potential for points in this one, and I'm definitely going with how about them boys as well.
Yeah. Let me ask you this about the Cardinals, kind of our
Mhm.
final NFL topic
Sure.
before we get into locks of the week. So the Cardinals are what now? 11-4, right?
10-5.
10-5,
Okay.
excuse me,
Yeah.
10-5. So they've lost 3 games in a row. They
Hmm.
started 10-2. I think they were like 7-1. Was their hot start a fluke this year, or is this a group that can regroup and make the playoffs? I mean, because we saw this with the Steelers last year, by the way. The Steelers got off to, I think, 11, 12-0, and then they folded down the stretch,
Hmm.
didn't win a playoff game, And we actually saw that the Cardinals, granted they weren't doing as well as this year, but the Cardinals folded down the stretch last year, didn't even make the playoffs. So is this a team that like can make noise in the playoffs, or was it just a really, really fluky start?
Um, I mean, it all kind of comes down to health, doesn't it? I mean, like DeAndre
Sure.
Hopkins is out for the rest of the regular season, and he's been banged up throughout the regular season. If he's able to come back and be, a viable player, a viable weapon for Kyler Murray, I mean, getting your number one receiver back in time for the playoffs, absolutely, they have the ability to make noise. It kind of comes down to, a lot of coaching. Cliff Kingsbury seems to do well with being able to they put up points and everything, but is he able to do the things to win a game? And those are kind of sort of two different things. Because it's not necessarily just about maximizing how many points you score. It's also clock management. It's maximizing the possessions you have, minimizing your opponent's possessions. And that's going to come through with, James Conner potentially getting healthy. How do you work him into the game where maybe you limit when you're going up against they wouldn't necessarily go up against Green Bay, but if they were matched up against,
Oh, just wait.
you know,
Who
like
are
I
they
don't know,
currently
like
matched up against? Have you looked?
I don't have that in front of me
If the
now.
results hold right now, they would
Uh-huh.
play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the opening playoff game.
You got to be able to try to run the ball against them, but that's going to be some tall timber for sure.
I mean,
So it depends on
regardless,
matchup. It depends on matchup who they're going to end up playing come January for a playoff spot. But it kind of does feel like they're a team that like can do really, really well for a long stretch in the regular season. They just don't have the bona fides for us to give them the benefit of the doubt that we were able to give, say, the Kansas City Chiefs earlier this season when they struggled and now have come on as of late. I do think they're in a different situation from Pittsburgh because Ben Roethlisberger's pretty much washed, and that's kind of why Pittsburgh fell down the stretch, is when you don't necessarily have a great quarterback or even a really good one, your team is going to struggle. Kyler Murray, the talent is there for sure. I don't question that in the slightest. It's just decision making and coaching, and those things kind of go to hand in hand. How is Cliff Kingsbury going to get his quarterback best prepared for success?
yeah, I'll go with the middle ground for their start. I think they overachieved a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they've underachieved right now, but injury is just part of it. J.J. Watt got hurt. I know he's not the same player he was, but he is a leader on the
Mm-hmm.
field. And it is different when you can lead in the huddle as opposed to leading from the sidelines. It is a different type of situation. Obviously, as you mentioned, DeAndre Hopkins, arguably the most talented receiver in the league. He's been playing banged up pretty much this season. James Conner, who was really good a few weeks ago, was out last week against the Colts. Edmonds has been banged up at the running back position. Even Kyler Murray has been banged up this year.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, he's played during the losing streak, but has he been 100%? It's hard to say. So I think their record at 10-5, I think, is about where it should be. I think they
Mm-hmm.
underachieved lately. They overachieved early, and at the moment they're hurt. I don't think they can make noise in the playoffs because no matter what happens, I don't think they're going to beat the Cowboys this week. So if they don't beat the Cowboys this week, they're looking at a wild card spot. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
the Rams beat the Ravens, which I think they will, and the Cardinals lose this week. They're out in the division. Actually, the Rams. So the Rams are in position for that division crown. So I think the Cardinals, if you're a wild card team, no matter what happens the rest of the way, you're going to play a division winner, right? So who are the
Mm-hmm.
division winners? The Packers, the Bucks, the Cowboys, the Rams. I don't think they can beat any of these teams, quite frankly. And I'm not convinced that they could beat them even if they were 100% healthy. Even if DeAndre Hopkins was 100% healthy, Murray, Watt, etc. I mean, I know I talked about this 2 weeks ago when we had the show. I got mad at Kyler Murray, but like, here's the deal. Kyler Murray had 2 interceptions against the Packers.
Mm-hmm.
He had 2 interceptions against the Rams. One was in his own 20. The other was in the red zone. So in the clutch moments against those teams, I don't trust Kyler Murray, quite frankly. And even last week against the Colts, which is another good team, like he played okay, but not great. They didn't put up enough points. So Kyler Murray, like I said, is a front runner. So I don't see them as a team that can make a run. I mean, anyone can make a run.
Sure.
There's a lot of parity. Anything is possible. I'm not saying 0% chance, but realistically, I think the Cardinals are going to be one and done in the playoffs. I do think it's going to be good experience, though. I think same deal with Joe Burrow, get his feet wet. Kyler Murray can get his feet wet in the playoffs. So looking forward to that. But I do think Cardinals come up short this week against the Cowboys. They get a wild card spot, and they come up short against either Tampa or the Rams. You can't even play your same opponent, I don't think. So I think they're most likely going to end up playing Tampa Bay, because I really think all these teams who have only 2 games left are going to run the table, is my opinion. So I think they're going to play Tampa, and I think they're going to be in trouble. They did beat Tampa.
I think so too.
They did beat Tampa earlier this season, though, didn't they? Or was that the Rams that beat Tampa? The Rams beat
Tampa. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see. I don't see Tom Brady losing in the opening round of the playoffs. He did that with the Patriots a couple years ago, but I think it's like the only time it's ever happened. So
yeah,
we'll see. All right. Well, hey, locks of the week, you think?
Yeah, that looks like that's next up on the rundown. Been a couple of weeks since we last reconvened. But yeah, got a couple of big matchups going. I think as a show, we did pretty well. I think we all had winning weeks. I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to double check that.
Nope.
Oh,
I ruined it. I had like 3 straight winning weeks. Actually, Tom, you're completely wrong, because I think Drew ended up having to change one of his soccer picks with the Barcelona game.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
So he got the Barcelona under wrong, and he actually had the Chargers covering against the Chiefs, and he had the, let's see, Bills Panthers under 43.5. There was 45 points in that game. He did get the Colts covering against the Pats, and the over for the Eagles Washington over 43.5. There was 44. But Drew was actually 2-3, and I was actually 1-4. So you're used to our winning run. We had about 3 weeks in a row where we all had winning records. I've been 4-1, 5-0. I was actually 1-4. I got that Chiefs pick right.
I had you at 2-3.
No,
because you had the Patriots, right?
I did. I missed the Patriots.
Oh, what am I writing down then? Okay, I'm just gonna let you run through everything.
Yeah, I'll run through it. So 2-3 for Drew. I was 1-4. I had the Chiefs pick. I missed the Patriots covering 2.5 against the Colts. I had the Packers -5 at the Ravens. Maybe you penciled that in as a win because they were up 14 late in the game, and they completely bungled that line. I had the Cardinals covering over the Lions. That one was way off. Seahawks +4 against the Rams, +4.5. So another one where I was burned late in a couple of the games. Maybe I should have been 3-2, but a couple of these teams didn't want to cover late. Tom, I had you at 3-2, so I mean you barely were over.
I had a good week.
3-2 is good. Week. Yeah, you went with soccer, which was bound to be a failure. Chelsea.
If I had stuck with my Steelers one, I would have been 4-1. But I decided to go for the bet. I played to the crowd and I lost.
All right, that's all right. You had Chelsea -1.5 against Everton. 1-1 final there. You had Bills -10 over the Panthers. Got that one right, 31-14. Pats +2.5 at the Colts. The Colts winning 27-17. Bengals +1.5 against the Broncos. They won 15-10. I should have done that one, by the way. That's one that I was looking at and did not do. So I was disappointed in myself there. And you had the Vikings -3.5 against our hometown Bears. I will tell you this.
Always a smooth bet.
As far as the betting world went, I was furious at the outcome of the Bears game because I had the Bears +7, and I also had them in a parlay, which, if you know parlays, you wash and they take it down. So I would have won the parlay, would have won about $50, and I would have washed on a couple of separate bets I had in that game because the Bears got a touchdown the last second of the game, and they don't kick the extra point in that scenario. They were 17-9. So made me very unhappy. I almost would have thought, heck, they should kick it or just go for 2 and get me the cover outright. But anyways, that Monday Night Football, significant to some, as they say, that did not work out well. But it worked out well for you. Tom, you and I tied for first. Year one of the locks of the week. Drew was last. Drew's now currently first. We flipped the standings.
By a half game, yeah.
Drew is 36-27-2. You're 35-27-3. I am 30-35. So I'll get going. I was going. I thought I was going to be over 500, but this last week was rough. But I have 5 guaranteed locks, 5-0 record this week. I'll let you get started first with your picks while I pull up Drew's picks. And actually, you know what? Let me read Drew's picks, and then
Sure.
I'll let you go so I can take a breather, losing my voice almost, and then I'll wrap it up. So Drew has Bengals plus 5.5 against the Chiefs. So he's convinced they'll cover. By the way, Drew Brackett did pick the Bengals as a dark horse team this year.
He
Keep
did.
that in mind, guys. He is Nostradamus. He has
Drew Stradamus.
Las Vegas plus 2.5 against the Colts. So clearly he thinks that Carson Wentz news is not great. I'm going to have to bet the other way on that one, by the way. I don't have that in locks of the week, but I might have to. Who are the Patriots playing? Because he just got these teams.
Jaguars.
Okay. Pats minus 15.5. Holy cow, that's a big line. And I still probably think they'll cover. And then he has Bears minus 6. Oh, my. The Bears covering. I know they're playing the Giants, but, man, the day the Bears cover 6 points. Have they won by more than 6 this year yet? I know they had that crazy.
I feel like they had to.
I don't know. They beat the Lions by 2. They beat the Lions by 10 earlier this season, I believe.
Okay.
So that might have been it. But then he has the Saints. Saints minus 7. Who are the Saints playing?
I don't even know. I don't actually even see that posted on Bovada.
Okay. He must have got it before. Saints.
Maybe it's not the Panthers, is it? It might be the Panthers.
I'm looking at it right now. Saints are playing the Panthers.
Yeah.
I don't even know if the Saints can score 7 points. I mean, come on. Are you kidding me, Drew? Drew, are you kidding me? I'm gonna bet it the other way. Panthers are doing bad, but I'm gonna go fade a couple of Drew Brackett's picks against him. But,
I mean, it all kind of comes down to Taysom Hill if he's healthy enough to go. I mean, I don't know.
Doesn't that sound bad?
I don't know if the Panthers can score, period, which makes, minus 7 not a bad.
What's the under in that game? Take the under.
Yeah, for sure. Hammer. It's probably gonna be set like 35 or something.
Should I bet my next paycheck?
I would not do that. I would not recommend that in the slightest.
I've actually been doing well with the betting this weekend.
Well, that's good.
had a winning weekend overall. Of course, I had a winning weekend the week where we didn't have locks of the week. I bet on about maybe 8 NFL games and went 5-3. I don't know which game I would have put in locks of the week. I probably would have picked the 3 that I lost and gone 2-3, but it was a good weekend for the betting. So hopefully things are turning around. I didn't bet my paycheck on that Patriots Colts game, by the way.
Yeah, good
Rest assured, I didn't go big on that game, thankfully, because it would have ended very poorly.
Very poorly.
I did bet on it and lost, but didn't go big, thankfully.
So long as you keep it manageable, you should be good to go. As far as my locks of the week, I'm actually in lockstep with Drew on the Patriots and the Jaguars. I mean, James Robinson on injured replacement. I don't really know who they have at this point to play particularly well. This seems like the type of game where pick 6 could definitely be in the cards for the Patriots.
I don't even know who their coach is. I don't even know.
Bevel. Former offensive coordinator for the Seahawks. The Patriots are motivated to let no chance of losing this game because they know they need to win to keep up with the Bills at this point. Any sort of 2-game advantage over the Bills is gone with their most recent loss. So I can see them, winning by a pretty substantive amount. I'll go ahead with Patriots minus 15.5. One play that I like pretty well is Steelers home dogs against the Browns. So give me 3 points. Steelers plus 3 at home. And then we've talked a lot about points being scored earlier in the show with our topics. I like Bengals Chiefs over 50 points, and I like Cardinals Cowboys over 51.5 points. Cowboys defense has been really, really good, but they've also been really good against bad teams. So I'm counting on, maybe a pick 6 here or there. And in general, just a lot of throwing the ball back and forth. And then I believe this is the Thursday night game. I don't know what to expect from the Falcons, but I think I do know to expect 28.5 points for the Bills on offense. I was kind of eyeing the game over, but I don't know what kind of Falcons team is going to show up, quite frankly. Yep. But I'm pretty confident Bills can put up a 30 spot in against Atlanta. So Patriots minus 15.5, Steelers plus 3, Cardinals Cowboys over 51.5, Bengals Chiefs over 50, and the Bills team total over 28.5 points.
All right, just look down at my phone to get the updated lines, so I'm covered. Now, surprisingly, Tom, I've noticed you and I actually tend to think a lot alike. We almost always have a line that we pick the same, and it probably is about 50-50 in its success rate. I actually think it's a little bit higher than 50%. I think we've been a little bit higher than 50 when we go the same way, maybe 55%. I think at one point we were really hot where we hit like
we had a good stretch.
We had a good stretch, so it's definitely over 50%. This week I have none of the same picks as you.
Okay.
I actually think I don't have any line picks involving games that you picked, and I don't have any line picks involving games that Drew picked. I do think. Let's see. I'm looking at Drew's picks. Drew has, we have none of the same line picks going up against each other. I do have, I believe you picked the Cowboys Cardinals over. I do have a pick in that game. It's not the over. So I'm going straight picks. I'm going lines, no overs here. I'm going Eagles minus 3.5 over the Washington football team. These same two teams played 2 weeks ago with the Eagles winning 27-17. Theme for my picks, go with the hot hand and go with the low hand, the losers, the cold streaks. I'm going to believe that all these teams that are hot will stay hot and all these teams that are cold will stay cold. So with that said, like I said, Eagles minus 3.5 over Washington. These same two teams played 2 weeks ago. Eagles winning by 10. Phillies won 3 straight, all by double figures, by the way. I know not against great teams, but, you win double-figure games 3 weeks in a row in the NFL. You're doing something right. In Washington, not a great team. Washington has lost 3 straight, all by 4 or more points, including 56-14 to the Cowboys last week. So I think the Eagles should cover by 4 points against Washington. I like the Cowboys minus 5 over the Cardinals. I know we just talked about this game, so I might sound a little repetitive with some of my stats, but two teams going in opposite directions. Cowboys have won 4 straight, all by 6 or more, winning 56-14 last time out. Cardinals have lost 3 straight, all by 6 or more. Dallas is just a better team. The Cowboys are at home. They've got it all going right now. Defense is forcing turnovers. Offense is putting up yards. Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Dak is looking great. Zeke and Tony Pollard both look healthy. They looked healthy last week. Kyler Murray, as I mentioned, has given away a lot of turnovers against good teams, 2 each against the Packers, 2 against the Rams, 2 interceptions. Trayvon Diggs is licking his chops. He's like, Kyler, throw me the ball. I believe, 14 is the single-season interception record?
Yeah, and that was done in 12 games.
Trayvon might be hunting. He'll be hunting those picks. Look for Kyler to throw a couple picks, especially if Dallas gets ahead early. Kyler will be forced to throw the ball down the field. So love the Cowboys minus 4 over the Cardinals. This one, I love this one also. My fourth and fifth picks, I'm not as confident. My first 3, I love. This one is the Rams minus 3.5 at the Ravens. Same deal. I'm rolling with the theme here, Tom. The hot teams. Rams have won 4 straight.
Welcome back to the bandwagon.
That's right. I'm back on the bandwagon. They've won 4 straight, all by at least 7. Ravens have lost 4 straight. You kidding me? 4 straight losses for the Ravens. Even if Lamar Jackson plays in this game for Baltimore, which I believe he's questionable, so not sure if he'll play, but even if he does play, I still like the Rams to cover because, this is a team that was hot early. They struggled in the middle. Now they're back to being hot. I still don't trust them in a close playoff game, but I'm not so sure this game's going to be close. You look at that Ravens secondary, worst in the NFL, just gave up more than 500 pass yards to the Bengals. Rams are 6th in the league in passing. So I look for Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp. I know Cooper Kupp is hunting that all-time receiving yards record. It's going to be Stafford to Kupp all day. Kupp will go well over 100, could get close to 200 yards. I think you're in the fantasy football championship game. You're playing Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp. You're in big trouble, my friend. You are in big trouble.
Probably.
But hey, second place isn't bad. $40, Tom, not bad.
Not bad at all.
Not bad at all. So, by the way, I'm still upset. Let me finish my locks of the week, then I'll tell you. Up next, Lions +7 at the Seahawks. Believe this or not, Tom, the Lions have covered in 6 of their last 7 games. Only game they didn't cover, they had like half the team out due to COVID. So when at full strength, the Lions have covered the last 6 games, and they actually have 2 wins and a tie in that stretch, and they've only had 1 loss in the last 7 games by 4 or more points. I picked them last week to cover, by the way, in a separate bet. I don't think it was in locks of the week, but I did. The Lions was one of the picks I hit against the Falcons. So I think Seattle might win this game, but hey, Seattle couldn't even beat the Bears at home. So Seattle's home field advantage is not the same as it was. So I feel great about the Lions covering 7. I actually feel much better that it's now 7. It was 6.5 earlier. I was running through my phone, got my updated lines. I'm like, oh, I'll take that half point.
Take that half point.
I'll take that half point on DraftKings. And then finally, I'm going to go one non-NFL pick. I'm going with my boys, the Warriors, -7.5 over the Nuggets tonight. Golden State's rolling the last few games, winning by 9 at the Suns, 9 over the Grizzlies, 15 over the Kings. Warriors are 20-10-2 against the spread. Nuggets just 13-18 against the spread. Golden State at home. Draymond Green, Jordan Poole might not cover. I don't even care because they've got such deep depth. The Nuggets have Jokic, and they have Jokic, and they have Jokic. They do have, I mean, if Porter Jr. and Murray were healthy, that's a different story. But at the moment, it's the Jokic show. And the Warriors have such a deep team that I like what the Warriors are going to do in this game. So give me the Warriors to cover 7.5.
Absolutely. Well, looking forward to it. It's pretty rare that we have a week where nobody's kind of going in conflict with each other. I mean, Drew and I we're riding along together on the Patriots, but beyond that,
no
a good chance for everyone to go 5-0 for the first time, maybe first time ever. I don't know if we've ever had
we've never had a 15-0
as a show.
No, we had. I think the best that we did was maybe 3 losses or 2 losses,
something like that. Yeah,
I think it was a few weeks ago. I think I might have went 5-0 and maybe 4-1.
Drew and I each went like 4-1. Yeah, I remember that.
Something like that.
Well, so, we'll see.
15-0. Let's make it happen. Let's make it happen. Actually, I don't know if I want that because I have a feeling that I might place a couple wagers against Drew to disagree against his picks.
No,
I don't know. Okay. We'll see.
If you insist,
we'll see. Then if that probably would make it 15-0. So we'll see. We'll see. We'll see how we go. I do think the Patriots pick I agree with. I agreed with maybe 2 or 3 of his picks. There was 1 or 2 that I wasn't sure about. So I'll have to take a closer look at those picks as we get to it. But hey, let's get into the sports trivia. Do you have some sports trivia? Because I have a theme trivia, just like you. You like to do themes.
Well, I have 2 trivias for you. One is highly topical, and one is a complete shifting gears that nobody's ever really going to get. So we'll go with the somewhat easy one. What is the first NFL team to have both a 7-game losing streak and a 7-game win streak in the same season?
Yeah, it's the Dolphins because I watched SportsCenter. So that one was the easy one.
Absolutely.
I did see that on SportsCenter last night.
That's incredible.
That's wild. And I'll tell you this, though. If you look at their schedule, while it's still pretty incredible, it's a little bit less incredible. Their schedule was very front-loaded with tough games and back-loaded with easy games. Even this game against the Saints are down to what? Ian Book is essentially like their 4th-string quarterback, if you think about it.
Ian Pamphlet.
Yeah, I mean, because like seriously, they had Jameis Winston, then they had Trevor Siemian, and then Taysom Hill, who maybe is ahead of Trevor Siemian, but there's injuries there, and and you factor in Drew Brees, who was last year. I mean, like it's a mess, and they had other guys out due to COVID. So Dolphins, yep. Then I'll let you hit me with another one since that one was so quick.
Sure.
Hit me with a tough one.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of statistic parameters and a couple of people who achieved the feats of doing this. So the parameters, this is a baseball question.
Okay.
The parameters are 5 or more innings, in a game, no earned runs, fewer than 2 hits allowed. Okay. So those are the parameters: 5 or more innings, no runs, and fewer than 2 hits in a game.
Okay.
Nolan Ryan and Justin Verlander have each done this in 8 starts in a given season. Pedro Martinez and Clayton Kershaw have each done this in 7 starts over a given season.
Okay.
This past season, somebody did it 9 times. This is the most that anybody has ever had. These are the most starts anybody has had in a season of 5 or more innings, no earned runs, 2 or fewer hits. Can you name that pitcher?
Max Scherzer is my first guess. Mizzou's Max.
Not Max Scherzer, but it is tangentially connected to us in some fashion.
Lance Lynn.
Getting much warmer.
Carlos Rodon.
Carlos Rodon. He never had, I don't think he's ever pitched a full season without some sort of health bug or anything like that. And I know he had like a little bit of a dead arm period. 9 starts this season, 5 or more innings, no runs allowed, and 2 hits or fewer than 2 hits. I think I don't think the little underscore sign is there. So yeah, just like an incredible season that with
hats off. Salute.
Hats off to him. And you consider the company: Nolan Ryan, Justin Verlander, Pedro Martinez, Clayton Kershaw. You got 4 Hall of Famers, and then Carlos Rodon not. So is this like
he
a
doesn't belong with those guys?
Or?
No offense to Carlos. He does in this statistic though.
He does in this one, yeah. So just I don't know, interesting. I saw that on Twitter and just had to share that one.
Yeah, my first guess was because it was Mizzou, because we're both Mizzou grads, and like you said, getting warmer. So I was like, it has to be a White Sox, and I was like, who are the 2 White Sox? I mean, it was Rodon and Lynn, who are both great this season. So I mean, I bet you Lynn had some of those as well. Like not like as many, but he must
not
have
as many. Yeah, probably.
At least.
Probably, yeah. For a while, he was like leading the betting for Cy Young. He was the betting favorite, and then Garrett Cole Robbie Ray came through and won that.
Yeah. So all right, well, hey, I got a topical trivia question.
Sure.
I know you love topical, so I want you to name the 5 college football teams with the most bowl wins.
Okay.
The programs.
All right, so I would have to say, I mean, because this goes back to like the 50s or whatever, like Oklahoma is on the list.
Oklahoma is number 4 on the. Well, they're technically tied for 4th. Yes.
Okay.
Or tied for Oklahoma. 3rd technically. There's 3 programs who each have 28 bowl wins. Oklahoma is one of them.
Wow. All right,
they're
so
the
Oklahoma,
3, 4, 5.
Ohio State.
Ohio State, surprisingly, not on this list.
Wow.
Top 5. I was a little shocked when I saw it. There's one team in this top 5 that surprised me, but then I thought about it and I was like, actually, this does kind of make sense.
Okay. So is Alabama on there? I know they've had.
Alabama's number 1, 35
okay, so Alabama, Oklahoma.
There's at least one other one I think you should definitely get, and the one that's number 2 all time. Because when I didn't look
Notre Dame?
Not Notre Dame. Notre Dame's not in the top 5. Texas is just outside this list. I actually copied and pasted the top 5. I think Texas was 6th, if I remember correctly.
Oh, gosh. Nebraska?
Not Nebraska.
Like a heritage program? No. Who else are some like
historical? This is a team who was really, really good when we first really kind of grew up watching college football.
Miami?
Not Miami. Who's the other team you would think of? Dominant team in right after Miami. They were the
USC.
USC.
Yeah.
USC's number 2 all time. Alabama is 35, 24, and 3. USC is 34 and 17. Then you have Oklahoma at 28, 19, and 1. So you're missing 2 teams. They are both definitely blue bloods.
So like Michigan is one I'm thinking of.
Not Michigan.
Not Michigan, but definitely a blue blood. Florida? They haven't really had that much success.
Nope. Actually, I'm going to pull up the top 10 list now on my computer because I actually literally copied and pasted the top 5. And now I'm curious to see how close you are.
How close I'm getting with some of these other blue bloods. Gosh, like Georgia.
Georgia is number 3.
Yeah, they're kind of like unsung in a lot of ways because like they're always really good, but never like great. So I'm missing one team then?
Yes. This is the one, by the way, that I was thinking. This is the one team that I was thinking at first, like, how is it? Oh crap! Hold on. Did I cue myself? Hold on. This is as of a few years ago, so maybe I should get a fresh list. Although this list actually has not changed because none of these teams behind here have won bowl games since. So this list is still accurate.
When you're talking like, is it something like Army that's just been around since the inception of everything and just on pure volume? Not Army. You definitely said it was a blue blood.
Actually, so this list is accurate, Tom.
Okay.
This list is accurate because I don't think any of these teams behind there. Nebraska is 10th on the list. And they have 24 bowl wins, but they haven't won 5 bowl games in the last, 5 years. So, and I wonder if Texas maybe has hopped the number 5 team, possibly. I doubt it though, because Texas and Tennessee haven't won in recent years. And where is Notre Dame on here? Like, I don't know. Like, I'm surprised Notre Dame is so low. I don't even see them on this list, the top 10.
Well, I mean, like, I know that they were pretty good in like the 80s, but like they've also had like long stretches of just not being good at all.
And they've had it where they make the playoffs and lose.
Right. Is it maybe like LSU? Is that on the top 5 list?
No.
I don't know.
This is
I might cry uncle on this
that won a whole bunch of games for a long time. And it makes sense if you think about it because I know they had won several national titles maybe, but they were rarely the top team. So this was probably a team who was playing in that like secondary bowl game, not playing for a national title, but taking care of business type deal. It's a Big Ten team. And it's not Michigan or Ohio State.
Oh, so then Wisconsin.
Not Wisconsin.
Not Michigan. Iowa then.
A certain legendary coach who sort of fell out of favor for neglecting to take care of certain things. He's now passed away.
Oh, wow. Penn State.
Yeah. Penn State.
I completely forgot they even existed.
Wow.
I mean, that's what having a sexual predator in your program will do for you. You get forgotten.
That's right. That's true. Yeah, and they were very steady. Wow. I mean, they were winning a lot of games.
Yeah. Wow.
Let me look this up real quickly while I do this. I want to find an updated list because I cued myself. I cued myself by looking at an old list. So let me pull this up here by wins. Okay. So here's the updated list. It actually technically has changed because technically Penn State now, well, they're tied for 5th. So they would be in the top 5. So Alabama is first with 44, which is crazy how much has changed in the last 6 years that they've won that many bowl games. They've won 9 bowl games in the last 6 years. The article was 6 years ago, I guess, because you win you get 2 bowl wins for the playoffs.
Yeah.
All right, so it's Alabama is first at 44, USC second at 34, Georgia's third at 33, which all those are still accurate based on my question. Texas is 4th at 31. Oklahoma and Penn State tied for 5th at 30. Then we have Tennessee, Florida State, LSU, Nebraska, Ohio State. I mean, where's Notre Dame on this list? Notre Dame's only
really far down.
20 in bowl games. Wow.
So I guess they make it to a bunch and then, just get the doors blown off.
12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. They're 21st in bowl wins. Notre Dame. They actually only have 2 more bowl wins than the alma mater, Mizzou.
Hey, we get mentioned in the same sentence with the football blue blood.
There you go. Hey, Dan Devine coached for both of those programs, by the way.
Oh, that's a connection. Wow.
Yeah, and he was the coach for Rudy, by the way.
Yeah.
When that movie happened, he was the coach for Rudy.
Never seen that movie. Don't think I even need to.
Really?
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Like, for whatever reason, I'm not a huge fan of most sports movies. I don't know what that is.
What is wrong with you, Tom?
I don't know. Like I've got a couple that I like, but usually
What do you
like
like? What's your favorite sports movie? I think Bull
probably Bull
Durham. I think you
Durham.
told me we had this talk before.
Yeah, Bull Durham I like. I mean, Space Jam is a fun little romp, but I'm never really compelled to watch it again and again.
Oh my
Remember the
god,
Titans is definitely a good one, but
my favorite, my favorite.
I have no desire to see the Sean Payton movie or the Kurt Warner movie. Like,
I'll be seeing the Kurt Warner movie probably. I
like
love
I don't
Kurt
think I've
Warner.
watched Hoosiers.
What about Blindside? I really like the Blindside.
Did not watch that one.
Ooh, it's so good. Friday Night
Hmm.
Lights.
No, never got into it.
Have you seen it?
No,
You need to see these movies. We Are Marshall. That's a good one.
no, haven't seen that one.
Oh my God, Tom, what are we gonna do
Radio
with
is
you?
pretty good.
Radio's pretty good.
I liked Radio.
What about Moneyball? You would like Moneyball.
I've seen snippets because that pops up on like the YouTube or Facebook feed. Haven't watched it start to finish though.
Oh, you got to watch that one. Tom, here's the problem. You just haven't given these movies a chance.
Well, no, but what I'm saying is like I'm just never compelled to watch sports movies, and I don't know what that is about me. It's probably that I'm not compelled to watch many movies. Period.
All right, I might have to send you a list of sports movies to watch. That may be happening over text because I am legitimately slightly disappointed right now. But anyways, to each their own.
Exactly.
What do you have for locks and not locks? We already did locks. Statement salutes of the week. What do you got?
I have a salute to the LA Rams earlier this week activating Cam Akers after he had a ruptured Achilles tendon. And the reason why is he actually might play this upcoming week. But even if he doesn't, you need to be active on the active roster for 3 games in a season for that year to count toward your pension a total, basically for retired players. So classy move by the Rams to activate a player who may or may not contribute to their team as they are trying to get into the playoffs. But even if his contribution is minimal at best, activating him so that he is able to qualify for pension, which is not only money but also health care after his career is over, is just a really great move, especially at the running back position where your longevity is especially short. Definitely when you have a ruptured tendon, a torn ligament, whatever myriad injuries running backs go through. So good on the Rams for standing by a young player in whom they've invested a lot, certainly as far as drafting him goes, but are also making sure that they support him further on down the line. I know it has lots of football implications that he can be active, he can play, but again, coming off such a tough injury, it's hard to see how much he's going to be able to contribute. They certainly could give that active roster spot to a lot of other guys. Good on them for sticking with one of their own.
Awesome. You have is that it? You have anything else? You got like
that's the salute. I mean,
statement?
I could do a statement on get off John Harbaugh's back and stop misappropriating the term analytics to in-game coaching decisions that coaches make. I mean, that's a little bit of a statement.
2-point plays?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they've lost the past 3 games by a total of 4 points, where he's going for 2 to win the game instead of going for 1 to tie. I mean, the most prevalent ones against the Packers, where it's like if you go for a tie, you still have like a minute, and Aaron Rodgers gets the ball. And what have we seen Aaron Rodgers do time and again? So it's good to go for the win.
Who else was it besides the Steelers? Because last week they lost big. I remember the Steelers and Packers. Was there another option, like another game?
I'm trying to think what the other one was. I just maybe it was like prior to this weekend.
Well, this weekend they lost big.
They lost big. So yeah, it was 3 games. The 3 games prior to this past weekend, then that I said that they lost 3 by 4 points total. I'd
have to look it up. And the 2-point play to me, here's the way I would make that decision. I would make it like, are you more or less likely to win if the game is tied? So against the Packers, I completely agree with the decision. Against the Steelers, though, I actually think they probably shouldn't have done it against the Steelers. So I mean, it's complicated. It is.
But
I normally like the aggressive nature personally.
Exactly.
But I mean, I don't think the Ravens were going to beat the Packers in that game. The only thing I could say is maybe like you do hold down Rodgers late, don't get a field goal, you get the flip of the coin, go your way. Your offense is hot, I don't know, but then you'd argue your offense is hot, they should get the 2-point play. So it's
basically just the statement is like,
sure,
stop misattributing, analytics as a monolith to overall coaching decisions, because it does come down to how banged up is my secondary, factors in things that don't go into a math equation,
sure,
per se. If you want to question the play calling, absolutely, you can do that. But I think, analytics gets a lot of a bad rap and is often misattributed to what it actually means.
Sure.
And it's definitely not, somebody punching in numbers on a calculator, calling down to the coach saying, do this instead of that. So that's the only thing. Like,
sure.
I've seen a couple segments like CBS does this with their show, where they have just like former players, former coaches talking about it. And they throw that word around a lot, but I don't think they use it properly. That's my biggest gripe with how that debate goes, if you want to call it a debate. So basically it's call things by what they are and don't use, one big word as a scary overarching thing for something that you don't necessarily understand. That's all.
That's fair. I agree. My statement of the week is I thought of another reason why we should expand the college football playoff. That reason is, and I'm so conflicted because on one end, I think like these guys have a right to protect their future. But at the same time, though, you can get hurt anywhere. We do see guys get hurt in practice. Doesn't happen as often as games, but guys get hurt in practice. They get hurt in training. And I know it's like your very last game. This is the last chance for it to happen. But I mean, I am not a fan of these college kids sitting out bowl games. I know the 4 Ohio State guys are sitting out, but we actually even had like some of these like smaller teams. I believe it was the Nevada Western Michigan game. Nevada, a program who doesn't win bowl games all the time. They had their top quarterback and I believe their top 4 receivers all sitting out. I believe some of those guys were NFL prospects. Some aren't though, which is even worse. Like, and there may have been injuries. I don't know all the specifics of all the situations, but it seems like we're seeing too many of these college kids sit out a bowl game. And I think of the Ohio State kids, it's the Rose Bowl. This isn't like the Independence Bowl. I know one year Leonard Fournette sat out when LSU wasn't in like a major bowl game, but it's the Rose Bowl. You're going to sit out the Rose Bowl. Oh, it just kills me. So another reason for us to see, and granted, there are sometimes star players on lesser teams that will be high draft picks. But for the most part, you look at most of the top picks in the NFL draft, they will come from the top 8 to 12 teams in the country. Most. Not all, but most. And if we end up having an 18 playoff, 12 team playoff, I wouldn't go as far as 16, but who knows what they'll do. But if we expand the playoff, we'll get to see more of these college kids on the big stage. And I actually think some of these kids, for them, the bowl game could be beneficial. You playing in a big game on a national stage, just to ask Vince Young. I don't know if you remember the 05. I mean, you remember the Rose Bowl, but do you remember the draft projections for that year? Did you know
I wasn't paying that much attention back then, no.
I was paying a lot of attention, and Vince Young was projected as a late first-round pick, mid to late. He was probably right around 20th pick in the NFL draft. I believe he went second overall. Vince Young was second overall. Because
was he?
I think so. You may look this up to confirm
I'll check it.
And again,
I know the Vince top 10 for sure.
The Vince Young example is actually, he might have been third. I think Reggie was second. You look it up right now and let me know what Vince Young was. But he was really, really high. And he was not projected to be that high. And he got it based on his Rose Bowl performance. This would have been what, 06 NFL draft, I believe? 05?
Yeah, third choice overall, yeah. It was Mario
overall.
Williams, Reggie Bush, Vince Young.
Who was first?
Leinart was 10.
Who was first?
Mario Williams.
That was, I believe, a defensive lineman, right?
Yeah, edge rusher, yeah.
Edge rusher,
pretty good career, actually.
Yes, with the Zine. Oh, I'm thinking of Xavier Clowney now in my head. But nonetheless, What team did Mario Williams play for?
He was drafted by the Texans.
Okay, so I am thinking of the right team also, because Clowney also went on to play for the Texans later. So I almost got those mixed up. But yeah, that's my point. So Vince Young was 3rd overall pick in the NFL draft that year. And he was being projected as mid to late. I mean, I had some draft experts actually had Vince Young as a 2nd-round pick. So literally his performance in that bowl game got him 15, 20, 30 spots higher than where he would have went. You can use, and again, that was the national championship. That's a little bit an extreme example. I'm not saying if an Ohio State receiver goes up against Utah, puts up 4 touchdowns, he's going to skyrocket 15 picks, but he could skyrocket 3 to 4 picks. It's possible. He can get his name out there, and it builds momentum. Imagine if you have a big bowl game, then you have a big combine. It's just a lot of momentum. So I would love to see these college kids play in their bowl game. Also, I don't know if you know this, or I don't think maybe you know this, but I don't think the common fan gets this, because I've actually covered a bowl game for Arkansas State. I know a smaller school, smaller bowl game in the GoDaddy, but all these colleges, when they go to these bowl games, they actually have fun team outings, and they also do outings where they help the community. They help, a food pantry. They help kids with cancer. They also see historical sites in that town. It's like, it's an opportunity to get experiences that you simply can't. And I'm not saying some of those guys still may go to that if they're not playing. I don't know how it goes, but it's just a whole different team bonding experience. It's an extra game. It's the pride for your school, your final college game, which the bowl games are on ESPN. I know not everyone is watching them, but it's essentially a nationally televised game for the most part. Play for your schools. It drives me nuts. And again, if you have a minor injury, then I understand it. But if you're healthy, I want the kids to play, but it's just become cool not to play. And if we expand the playoff, we'll have more of an opportunity to see some of these kids on the big stage. And I'll tell you this, some of these college bowl games, you know this, you work a lot of Saturdays. And I've worked a lot of Saturdays in my life. We get busy. We don't all get a chance to see all of these schools. You pick you choose your games. But now that they've got these day games, they've got these different times, it's just another extra opportunity for exposure and for name recognition. I just would love to see these top kids playing. And one of the solutions is to expand the playoff for that reason exactly, because I don't think kids are going to be opting out of a chance to play in the playoff.
No, I definitely think that would be a good way of getting them in. I mean, playing a little bit of devil's advocate. I mean, look at Jalen Smith, if you remember him from Notre Dame, tore 2 ligaments in the Fiesta Bowl, went from being a potential top 5 pick. Well, I know, but he went from a top 5 pick down to drafted 34th. So,
but how often does that happen? That's the only example.
Well, but then how often does how does a Vince Young? How often does that happen?
Exactly, they both only happen one time. So it's it's just not likely for either.
I get the point. I think
my scenario is more likely though. I'm thinking the Vince Young example off the top of my head, but I mean I can argue Tua getting drafted so high was because of some of the stuff he did in those college. I know those the college football playoffs, but still, it's you can make a case for that as well. I don't know. I have to look more into that, but I like the idea of you playing in those bowl games. There's definitely more examples, and I'm missing some of them right now because I probably should have come up with exact examples. Vince Young was the only one that I was really thinking of.
He's the outlier one, and Jalen Smith's the outlier in the other. And of course, there's a big bell curve in between. I mean, a larger or more expanded playoff field definitely would do that. I mean, I know they have name, image, likeness opened up, throw a little cash incentive on a bowl game. I mean, with the Gator Bowl, which was Texas A&M, and who were they facing in that when they got canceled? That was a $5.5 million bowl game. Sure. It's if this isn't going to be for a championship, be hey, everybody who shows up and plays at this particular game gets a little something,
By the way, Tom, while I don't condone colleges paying their athletes, because I think they already get paid a lot, and there's a whole big debate we can get into.
Sure.
I can actually get behind this because I think you're paying for something achieved. Now, it would be a small payment. I think it would be a small payment.
Sure, yeah, you got to split it
evenly. I don't think, but I like that idea. Yeah.
Yeah, give a little cheddar to the kids. They've earned it. They're playing an exhibition game that has no like real impact on like conference or anything like that over the holidays. Like every little bit helps.
Sure. All right. Well, hey, that was a good show, Tom.
We're out here fixing problems.
Yeah, fixing problems. We'll be back next week on Tuesday, most likely. We'll check in on things, but probably back next Tuesday. We kind of picked our national champs. We won't have time to get into those predictions before because of work schedules. I know we did last year. We did a national championship preview right before. I don't think that'll work out this year, but so we'll actually recap the national championship next week, as well as get into a lot more NFL talk. I know we've talked about this over the last few weeks, but really starting the night after this week, we'll have 1 week left, right? After this Sunday. So
week
next
18.
week, we'll get into a lot of like playoff scenarios, who's going to make the playoffs, who won't. That's going to be a really fun week, the last week of the season. So, all right. Well, thanks so much, Tom. Hopefully we get Drew back as well.
Absolutely.
Have a great night. Thank you
Have
for
a happy
everyone for
new
watching.
year to everybody out there watching it. Happy New
last
Year.
show of 2021. We'll see you next year. All right.